Story 1. I saw a man standing in the road, but he was upside down. This happened to me in 2019 during a haul through rural Wyoming. I was headed east with a load of metal fabrication equipment. It was late October. Nights were getting longer and colder. That evening, around 1:30 a.m., I was driving a 2-lane stretch between Riverton and Casper, one of those remote highways where the only illumination comes from your own headlights, and the silence is so complete you start to feel like you're the only one left in the world. I'd been driving for about 9 hours, with plans to stop at a rest area another 40 minutes up the road. There was no reception and barely any signage, just the dark, rolling land and occasional cattle fence. I remember the cold starting to creep into the cab. I turned up the heat and took a swig of bitter gas station coffee. At that point, I wasn't tired yet, just locked into the rhythm of the road, windshield humming, tires eating miles. Then I saw him, about 100 feet ahead, a man standing directly in the middle of the lane. My first instinct was to brake, but something in my brain pulled me back, not in fear, but in confusion. It wasn't just that he was there. It was the way he was there. He was upside down, not lying on his back, not doing a handstand. His body inverted. I slammed the brakes, hard. My seatbelt dug into my chest. The truck's tires screeched against the pavement. Everything in me screamed, "This can't be right." But I was awake. I was completely awake. He was about 10 yards ahead by the time the truck came to a stop. He hadn't moved. The figure remained still, upside down, his arms slack, head arched backward with what looked like the top of his skull resting on the asphalt. His legs pointed straight up, like stakes. There was no shaking, no swaying, no visible tension in the muscles. That's what made it worse. His body wasn't struggling to stay like that. It just was. He looked placed, like someone had set him there to be discovered. I sat frozen, hands locked on the steering wheel. I didn't want to turn off the lights. I didn't want to blink. I didn't want him to move. But of course, eventually, he did. Without sound or transition, his arms began to lift. They rose straight upward like dead weight on strings. Then his legs twitched once, a single sharp bend at the knees, and he folded forward. Not down, not to the side, just forward. His whole body rolled in on itself like someone crumpling a puppet, and then he was gone. I stepped out of the truck, heart racing, one hand on the doorframe, the other gripping a flashlight. I scanned the area, no body, no man, not even footprints, just cracked pavement and wind. I told myself it was sleep deprivation, maybe a hallucination, but I hadn't felt tired. I hadn't drifted, I hadn't even blinked. Still, I got back in the cab and kept driving. I couldn't stop. There was nowhere to stop. Not out there, but I kept my high beams on the entire rest of the way. And for the next few hours, I flinched every time I saw a reflector or a sign bent slightly in the wind, because the one thing I'll never forget wasn't what he looked like. It was how calmly the body defied the rules I trusted. When the body resists spatial logic, the mind doesn't fight. It just obeys. The next afternoon, I stopped at a small truck plaza just outside Laramie. I'd barely slept. Every noise the truck made, the creaks, the groans, the air pressure valves hissing, felt louder than usual. I hadn't told anyone about what I saw, not even over the radio. There was a pull-off just past the main fuel station, a dirt patch facing the open fields. I parked there, grabbed some coffee, and sat in the lot with my window cracked open. I didn't feel like talking to anyone. I just wanted air, and I wanted to check my tires. I walked around the truck, inspecting the treads like always. The rubber was caked with light gravel and dust, nothing unusual. But when I made it to the rear tires on the driver's side, I froze. There were marks behind the truck, curved ones, not skids, not drag lines. These were lifted, 2 faint arcs in the dirt, about 6 feet long, maybe 3 feet apart. They began behind the back tires, but instead of fading into the dust, they rose. as if someone had drawn them with a stick, then dragged that stick upward. I knelt down. They weren't impressions, not indentations. There was no depth, just faint trails in the dirt that somehow gave the illusion of lifting off the ground, like the grooves had bent gravity. I took a photo. It didn't show up. Nothing looked strange in the image. But standing there, you could see it. The marks shouldn't have been there. I hadn't reversed over anything. There was no reason for them to exist. And worse, they weren't mine. I checked the entire area around the truck. No other tire tracks, no sign anyone else had been through. It felt like someone or something had placed them there after I parked. Later that evening, I showed another driver, an older guy named Curtis. I'd seen at a few rest stops before. He'd been on the road 30 years. He looked at the marks, then at me, said nothing. Finally muttered, "Sometimes it's best not to ask." I nodded. I didn't ask again. I left the plaza just before sundown. The marks were still there when I pulled out, and as I watched in the mirror, they didn't blur or fade with distance. They just remained, clear, curved lines that rose toward nowhere. A few weeks later, I was assigned a haul to Colorado Springs. Mostly short highway cuts, but with some night driving if I wanted to stay on schedule. It was about 2:15 a.m. when I hit a straight stretch between Rawlins and Elk Mountain. I'd taken this route before, and I'd always hated this part. Something about the narrow road and the darkness, no towns, no exits, just space and silence. There's a kind of silence in the cab that only happens in those hours. You can hear the dashboard click, the fan hum, your own breath pressing against your teeth. That's when I noticed it, in the rear view. At first, I thought it was a road sign, just something catching the headlights. But it was too close. There was a shape, centered in the road, small, still, vertical. Then, as the truck began a gentle turn, the shape moved slightly with the angle. It didn't stay centered. It drifted, just a bit, to the left. That's how I knew it wasn't a sign. I adjusted the mirror, leaned forward. It looked like a figure, standing, but the head, it was angled just enough to suggest it wasn't upright. Not tilted like someone leaning, not bent like someone listening. Tilted sideways, maybe 30 degrees, like someone craning their neck to see something or watch. The moment I thought that word, watch, I felt the cold again. The same cold as before. Not wind, not chill. Cold inside the body. I blinked. The figure was gone. Just an empty highway behind me. I kept driving, didn't say a word. The rest of the trip passed without incident. No delays, no mechanical issues. But I rerouted the next one, took longer paths, spent more money on fuel, changed my patterns. Did everything I could to avoid that stretch again. But even now, years later, I still see it sometimes. Not always on the same road, not always at night, but in the rear view, just beyond the taillights. A small figure, tilted, watching, and no matter how fast I go, it never gets smaller. Story 2. The truck stop mirror showed my truck, but I wasn't in it. This happened to me in late 2020 during a delivery route that took me through central Nebraska. It was my second year hauling full-time, and I was on a solo night run that started in Kansas City and was supposed to end near Cheyenne. I'd been driving since around 4 p.m., and by the time I hit Lincoln, it was after midnight. I stopped at a Love's truck stop just outside a town called Milford, the kind of place that's big enough to have a food court, but still feels like it's on the edge of nowhere. Bright lights, lots of asphalt, one mirrored glass wall along the side of the building where the food court entrance was. I'd been there before. It was a regular stop for a lot of drivers heading northwest. I'd never had a bad experience there, never even seen anything strange, until that night. I pulled in and parked, took the keys, and walked across the lot. It was cold and dry, quiet, no one else walking around, just the low idle of a few engines and the buzzing of the overhead lights. I remember passing that glass wall on my way in, caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror as I walked past. Only something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it right away. It was subtle, a lag maybe, or the angle. Something about the timing felt wrong. When I turned to glance more directly at the mirrored surface, everything looked normal. My reflection, jacket zipped up, cap pulled low, same stride. But for a split second before I turned, I could have sworn I saw something different, like the reflection hadn't matched my motion. I kept walking, telling myself it was just the lighting or the angle of the glass. Inside, I grabbed a drink, some chips, and used the restroom. When I came back out, I stopped again in front of the mirrored wall. This time, I watched closely. At first, everything was fine. I walked slowly, steady pace. Saw myself moving, my limbs matched, my stride matched. But just as I passed the last pane of glass, I caught it again. The momentary delay, like the reflection hesitated, only by half a second, but enough that I noticed. My head turned, but the reflection held forward. Then it caught up. I froze, took a few steps back. Nothing. The reflection matched perfectly. My hands moved, my hat shifted. It was all right, until I turned to walk back toward my truck and saw the reflection behind me. I was walking away from the mirror. But in the reflection, there was no one behind me, no back, no head, no outline moving into the lot, just the empty reflection of the parking space where I'd parked. I stared into the glass, breath fogging slightly. My truck was there, plain as day. The red cab, the dirt streaks on the fender, the faint glow from the interior cab light, but no me. In the mirror, I wasn't walking toward it. I wasn't anywhere. I turned around. There I was, physically, standing maybe 50 feet from my truck. Keys in hand, steps crunching softly across gravel. I turned back to the mirror, still nothing. I wasn't there. The glass showed my truck, showed the lot, even the faint shadow of a guy stepping out of the fuel kiosk 2 lanes over. But I wasn't in it. I waved one hand slowly. The mirror didn't respond. That's when it hit me. I could see other people's reflections. I could see the guy coming out of the shop, moving across the lot. I saw a flash of another driver behind the counter inside the building, but I wasn't reflected anywhere. Not in the window, not in the polished chrome of the door, like I didn't exist. I stood there, holding my breath, and tried not to panic. Then I took a step forward, and just like that, I snapped back into the reflection. It was jarring, like stepping into a body that had been paused without your consent. My image reappeared exactly where I expected it to be. Same posture, same motion. But I hadn't moved into the reflection. It had just decided to resume. I climbed into my cab without looking back. I pulled out of the lot around 12:47 a.m. I know the time exactly because I checked the dashboard clock right after I turned back onto the highway. About 15 minutes later, I was halfway to Grand Island when I remembered I'd left my wallet on the counter. It happens, especially when you're tired. You toss a receipt down, grab your change, and just forget to scoop the wallet up. I cursed out loud, made a U-turn at the next service exit, and headed back toward Milford. When I got there, the place was exactly as I'd left it, mostly empty, a few trucks fueling up. I parked, headed back in, and told the woman behind the counter I thought I'd left my wallet. She said, "What color was it?" "Brown leather, bit worn." She nodded, bent down, and grabbed it from a drawer. "Had your receipt in it too. Thought you'd be back." I took it from her, relieved. Gave her a grateful nod, then glanced at the receipt tucked beneath the fold. That's when the second weird thing happened. The timestamp said 12:36 a.m., but I hadn't even pulled into the lot until 12:43. I checked my phone to be sure. I even opened the dashcam preview on my phone app to verify when I'd parked. It clearly showed me pulling into the lot at 12:43:08 a.m. So how had a receipt been printed before I got there? I double-checked the printed location ID on the slip. It was the same store, same register number, same purchase, Gatorade, chips, restroom token. I turned back to the woman and said, "Hey, sorry, but this receipt's timestamp is wrong. Says 12:36. I didn't even get here until almost 10 minutes later." She raised her eyebrows. "That's odd. Let me see." I handed it to her. She looked at it, then glanced at the register monitor. Her eyes flicked to a drawer. She opened it, pulled out another receipt. Identical. Same items, same price, same store. But this one had my name on it and a different transaction ID. I hadn't used a rewards number. I never use one. So why would a receipt have my name? She looked at me. You said you bought this just now, right? I nodded. But this one says, Michael R., Loyalty ID 9872. That's my name. I don't have a loyalty account, never set one up, never even typed it in, and the transaction ID was lower, meaning it came before mine. She pulled up the register logs. There were 2 purchases under the same name, one at 12:36 a.m., one at 12:44. Same items, slight variance in tax line, 2 versions of the same buy, 2 identical receipts, only one me. I asked if I could keep both slips. She looked uncomfortable, but said sure. I walked out of that truck stop holding 2 receipts, one printed before I arrived, one while I was standing at the register. Same time, same transaction, same person, and still somehow wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I'd reached my drop point early, parked the trailer, and checked into a roadside motel near a little town outside Cheyenne. The room was dim, the curtains barely functional, and the heater wheezed every 5 minutes like it was choking. I laid on the bed, both receipts spread out on the table. I kept looking back and forth, comparing print density, layout, even how the corners curled. They were real, not copies, not fake. I started Googling, found a forum for long-haul drivers. There was a thread buried deep, titled Reflections Out of Sync, Truck Stop Mirror Stories. Most people dismissed it. Some joked about diesel fumes messing with the brain, but a few described things eerily similar to what I'd seen. Reflections that lagged behind, mirrors that didn't match the angle of the viewer, instances where the truck was visible, but the driver wasn't. One post stood out. It was from a user named Not On Video, and it just said, I left the truck stop at 1:02 a.m. Security camera showed me leaving the door, but not entering. I never showed up coming in, not once. Another replied, same here. Saw myself walking across the lot, but when I turned, the reflection stayed. It didn't follow. And another, don't trust the glass, it doesn't show now. It shows what could have happened, or maybe what almost did. That phrase stuck with me. What almost did. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened at that truck stop, whatever glitch or echo or fracture had occurred, it hadn't finished. I checked the receipts again. Then, on impulse, I logged into the dashcam cloud footage. I scrolled to 12:44 a.m., the moment I entered the truck stop, and there I was, opening the door, walking across the lot. But something felt wrong. So I scrolled back to 12:36 a.m., and there, in grainy infrared, was another figure. Same walk, same posture, same jacket, walking across the lot, into the truck stop at 12:36, 8 minutes before I ever arrived. The system only holds footage for 72 hours. I saved it, but when I tried to download the clip, the file became corrupted. No matter what I did, it wouldn't open. I still have the receipts. I still remember the mirror. And ever since that night, I make it a rule. I never look too long at truck stop windows. I never ask for printed receipts. And I never, ever try to see if my reflection is moving when I am, because sometimes I don't want to know who walked in first. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. The Woman in the Ditch Who Knew My Name. This happened in late spring of 2022. I was running a mid-length haul across eastern Oklahoma, headed toward the Arkansas border. It was early evening when I left Tulsa, and by the time I was halfway down US 64, the storm had rolled in hard. You know the kind. Thick, warm rain slamming the windshield in sheets, wipers struggling to keep up. I'd slowed down to about 40, hazard lights on, barely able to see 20 feet ahead. The road was 2 lanes with no shoulder, cutting through dense woods and sharp drainage ditches that overflow when the rain hits heavy. I was focused on the road, both hands on the wheel, listening to the rhythmic smack of rain on glass, engine humming beneath the storm. Then I heard her voice, clear, close, right next to me. She said my name, not shouted, not whispered, just spoke it, calm and full. Paul. I almost veered off the road. My first instinct was that someone had climbed into the cab somehow. I turned my head so fast it strained my neck. Empty. Passenger seat untouched. No smell, no door sound, but I heard it. And not in my head, not an intrusive thought or daydream. It didn't come from inside the truck. It cut through it. The engine, the weather, the glass, all of it was still there. And yet her voice landed perfectly, like it didn't travel through the air, like it arrived. I slowed even more, leaning forward against the wheel, scanning the ditches for wildlife or wreckage. Maybe I thought it came through the CB, but the radio was off. About a mile up, I saw something in the ditch ahead. A figure, slumped, upright, but low to the ground. I slowed to a crawl. The rain was coming down so hard, it looked like steam. As I got closer, I saw it was a woman, sitting, legs bent to one side, palms resting in the mud. Her hair was dark, soaked flat against her skull. She was wearing what looked like a light denim jacket and tan slacks. No shoes. She wasn't moving. I eased to a stop, rolled down the passenger window halfway. "Ma'am, you all right?" She didn't flinch, just lifted her head, slowly, and said my name again. Paul. No question, no urgency, no uncertainty, like she was confirming. The sound of my name inside that storm, it didn't match, it was wrong, it was too clear. There was no reverb, no fade, just her voice and rain. I froze. The woman didn't ask for help, didn't stand, didn't even acknowledge the truck. She just sat and stared up at me through the rain like she was waiting for something to catch up. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe a full minute. I rolled the window back up and drove away. It wasn't until 5 miles later that I realized she wasn't wet. Not like me, not like the rest of the ditch. Her hair was soaked, sure, but her clothes, dry, untouched by rain. Even now, I can't explain how I heard her voice over that storm, but I still remember the way she said it, like she wasn't calling to me, like she was reminding me. I kept driving through the rain, heart pounding, hands slick on the wheel. I kept telling myself I'd imagined the clarity, that maybe I'd read lips. Maybe the storm created some kind of acoustic illusion. I didn't believe it, but I needed to. I made it to Fort Smith just after 10 p.m., dropped the load at the depot, and checked into a nearby motel. The next morning, the storm had cleared. Blue sky, dry pavement, everything smelled like ozone. I went to the front desk to grab a coffee. The guy behind the counter handed me a sealed envelope. "This came in for you earlier," he said. I frowned. "From who?" "Didn't say. Just had your name on it." Front desk held it. The envelope was plain white. No markings, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of folded paper, standard 8.5 by 11. It was a copy of a delivery manifest, the kind we use to log pickups and drop-offs. It had the company logo, timestamp, trailer ID, driver signature line, except it wasn't a copy of anything I'd done. It was a future manifest. The date was 2 days from now. The route was from Tulsa to Texarkana, a run I hadn't been assigned. But there it was. My name, my truck number, even the last 4 digits of my carrier ID. Destination, a tool warehouse in Ashdown, Arkansas. Weight, 6,220 lbs. Pickup time, 10:45 a.m., 2 days out. I stared at the paper for a long time, folded it up, asked the guy at the desk again, "You sure no one said anything when they dropped this off?" He just shrugged. "Was sitting here this morning. Could have been left overnight." I called dispatch, pretending to confirm a job. "Hey, I've got a manifest in my mailbox for a Tulsa to Ashdown on the 17th. That mine?" There was a pause on the line. Then, "No idea what you're talking about. We haven't slotted you for anything until Monday. That job doesn't exist." "Nope. Nothing to Ashdown until next week, and that one's already assigned." I hung up, looked at the paper again. Same route, same warehouse I'd delivered to once, months ago. Same time window. How did someone print a manifest for a job that hadn't been scheduled? And why was it addressed to me? That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to the woman in the ditch, her voice, her dry clothes, the way she sat still in the chaos, and the way she looked at me, not like a stranger, but like someone who already knew what I'd choose. About a month after that trip, I found myself running loads through Arkansas again. Same region, same two-lane roads. This time it was mostly clear, light fog, no real weather, but I was driving with a different level of attention. I'd started changing my routes, avoiding stops I didn't need, skipping gas stations if the vibe felt off. Something had shifted in me since the woman. I couldn't explain it. I just didn't want to be where I wasn't supposed to be. That night, I was approaching Camden from the east when the rain started again. Same kind of downpour, sudden, warm, heavy. I flipped the wipers on, slowed to 35, watched the shoulder closely, and that's when I saw her again. Only this time she wasn't in the ditch. She was on a billboard, about a quarter mile ahead. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a strange ad or a coincidence. But as I got closer, the details locked in. Same denim jacket, same tan pants, same hair, flat against her skull. She wasn't smiling, wasn't posed like an ad. She was sitting, like before, legs bent to one side, arms down, palms pressed to the floor. The billboard didn't advertise anything, no brand, no text. Just her, sitting in that exact same posture, like she'd been recorded, captured. I slowed down almost to a stop, hazard lights blinking in the storm. The billboard was rusted, old, looked like it hadn't been used in years, but the image was new. The panel was clean, no damage, no graffiti. Just the woman, looking straight ahead, not at the road, but through it. I kept driving. That night, back at the motel, I looked her up, tried to search for missing persons, billboard campaigns, anything with that image. Nothing came up. No artist credit, no local marketing. It was like that board didn't exist. A week later, I told a fellow driver, a guy named Mason, about it. I didn't expect him to believe me, but he did. He said, "You've seen the Route Oracle?" I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "That's what some guys call her. Shows up when routes go wrong. Not to stop you, just to market." He went quiet for a moment, then added, "She doesn't speak to everyone, only the ones who won't listen." I asked what that meant. He just looked out at the rain and said, "It's not a warning if you already took the road. It's just a receipt." That hit me harder than I expected, because ever since I saw her, I've felt like my schedule isn't mine anymore, like I'm following a route I didn't plan. Like something's using my own choices to steer me toward places I don't remember choosing. She didn't ask for help, she didn't wave, she just said my name and let the road do the rest. Now, every time I pass a drainage ditch in the rain, I look, not to find her, but to see if I'm already there.